Zach, are you prepared to do the prayer and the pledge?
I can, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today as we have an emergency meeting to talk about this virus that is spreading amongst the world. Lord, this virus, it may be bad, but there's many others out there that's far worse. And I know that our country and our community and even the world is panicking right now. And God, we pray that you will give everyone guidance and help us through this time and maybe stop some of the panicking, that it is your will that'll be done, no matter what us humans may want to do or try to do. It is always your will. In your name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is not being sent out on a webcast.
Gentlemen, take a look at your agenda, please. May I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Madam Chair, when we do this, we need to...
Yes, okay. Yes, sir. Thank you. Let's stop for a moment. We need to excuse Commissioner Shell, Commissioner Truill, and Commissioner McClure. Do I have a motion? Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? All right. Now let's take a look at the agenda. Motion?
I make a motion to approve the agenda, and Madam Chair, if I could, if we could just have a few minutes to read over these documents. This is the first time I've seen them.
Okay. Take your time.
So we don't know that the other two commissioners, Truill and Clover, even knows about this meeting?
Other than the email I sent them last night, and I just left them both voicemails. They did not pick up their phones.
The dangerous thing that could happen is I could have, and tell me if I'm wrong, but if I would have nayed the vote to excuse the individuals from that, then automatically their votes would have been yes through the provision. Is that correct? Because I'm still confused about the special meeting.
If they're not excused, the meeting is an automatic.
It's an automatic yes.
Whatever.
That, ladies and gentlemen.
But if they're not excused, but we just excused them.
What I'm saying is, if I would have voted nay, not to excuse them, if I had
an agenda.
I
got you.
See what I'm saying? That's something to think about for when we reach out or whatever. Because I didn't know that until that came through the other day, and I was reading that, and I was like, wow. Okay.
But that goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get upset in a meeting and I get up and walk out because I'm ticked, then this board, the other 6 members, could not excuse me to make my vote a yes.
Mm-hmm.
That goes both ways.
Okay.
But this board, typically, it doesn't matter if we like somebody or not. This board has always worked with the other members. And if there's a member not present and there's something that is an important issue that we could wait till the next meeting when they can be here, we've always done that.
Yeah, and that's what I would do, but when I read that, I was like, I need clarification on this.
Yeah, and I understand.
Yes,
yeah, I learned that down in the school and government stuff. Mm-hmm. But like I said, this board, we've always worked well together.
That's good.
I mean, it's just, we've always done that. I guess that's why the county runs so good, or so well.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think you have a motion for the agenda, do you, Madam Chair?
I do.
I'll take a second on that.
Okay. All in favor?
Or we voting?
Have you had time?
We'll have time to read over some more and ask questions about these documents here as we work through them.
Okay.
That motion carries with you.
So, Chuck, you say, and the best I remember, Madam Chair don't need a vote on this for the, state of emergency?
No, sir.
Okay,
As you may recall, during the time that you served as chairman, under our Chapter 31 of our Code of Ordinances, under emergency management, it specifically provides for the chairman to have the authority to declare a state of emergency. There have been occasions, however, in the past in which we have had special meetings or we have had a meeting date that has met with, and the chair has sought some direction and guidance from the board, but this is a unilateral decision of the chair. We revised our emergency management ordinance in December of 2018, and at that time we made some pretty significant changes that Alton brought to us. And probably the most significant change looking forward for us is the duration of a declaration of a state of emergency. We were the only county in the state that previously had a sunset provision under our declaration. It only lasted for 3 days, and I'm sure you recall the times we had to come and string it together in order to continue to stay eligible for funding, 3 + 3 + 3 and ad nauseum. That provision was taken out. We're now consistent with everyone else in the state. But the declaration by its very nature anticipates that it could well be a situation in which the board could not convene and gives that authority to the chair. The board retains the authority in meeting, however, to declare the state of emergency to be terminated. So if it's declared by the chair, then the board meeting together can terminate it or continue it.
okay. Madam Chair, I think you know, where I stand on this state of emergency. I don't really care to vote this morning. My colleagues may, but I would probably leave that decision up to you because at this point, I don't feel that we're in a state of emergency. I think, things would have to be a whole lot worse than what they are now before I'd consider them a state of emergency. So, that's where I stand on this state of emergency.
Madam Chair, I totally respect Commissioner Yates's opinion on this, and up until March 13th, I felt the same way. I felt like, until we had a direct, coronavirus, ping in Davidson County, that would probably change our direction. But when, March 13th, 2020, President Trump declared the COVID-19 pandemic to be a national emergency, that's my president. He's been the one that has said we need to act with resolve and with wisdom. And if President Trump has issued a national emergency, I would think that we would, get on part with that and do our due diligence on the local level to do the same thing. Now, he's not trying to press hysteria or to get people riled up, but if he feels like it's a need for a national emergency, I think that we need to make the provisions on the local level to look after the citizens and our families. Thank you.
What would the state of emergency do on a local level to, tell me where that would help? I'm just asking this question.
It would provide us, number one, the ability that if citizens or anybody like that would get out of hand, if God forbid we would have riots over toilet paper or anything like that, we would have some provisions that we could put in place. It also opens up the money.
We have that already, a police force.
We absolutely do, but it also opens us up for money if we have to do deep cleaning on our facilities that could happen at any time. We could have a positive case that comes up here. If we had a positive case at the jail or anything like that, it could open up provisions that not only would help us pay for transporting inmates, which we're already doing, but it could just offer us a little bit more help. And there's so many unknowns what could happen in the local government with our operations that I feel like, necessarily creating a local state of emergency is not saying that we're panicking, but we're having the due diligence and the wisdom to set forth parameters that would help us get additional funding. We're already cut thin now when we're looking at funding, and I think it would be wise that if we had something in place, that if something does ping, that we're already one step further. Instead of waiting, if we decide not to do it and then something was to happen, we'd have to call another special meeting, come together and try to do it, or wait till a Tuesday.
I got a question for Chuck on that. So, the president has declared a state of emergency?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
In the draft of the declaration of state of emergency, which is before you this morning, that is really an amalgam of two different sources. One are the declarations that have been entered already by Buncombe, Guilford, Forsyth, and Randolph counties. Over the last several days, we've been looking at those and took language out of that. Right. And then the second piece is really the template that this board has used in the recent past with entering a state of emergency. And specifically, one of the things that we've done that I think is unique to us is that we specifically say on the bottom of page 1 of this proposed draft that none of the emergency prohibitions or restrictions authorized by law and set out in the Code of Ordinances are currently required by the current circumstances within the county. So we're saying that we're not entering any of those, but that I believe it's probably implicit in what we're doing here that this is a funding vehicle. This is really part of the second piece that the board will be considering here in a minute, and that is to address issues of both HR issues, of telework issues, of being able to help the health director with issues as they come up until the board can meet. So there really are two separate pieces of this. One is the declaration of the state of emergency, and then one is to authorize the county manager to take some extraordinary measures in the absence of or before the board can reconvene.
This is the first state of emergency I've done when there's been a national state of, or a national emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've had some regional issues in the past with
Mostly storms.
with ice storms, with tornadoes, and there have been times when the state has declared a state of emergency. But I agree. I don't recall us having had a
Federal state
federal
of emergency.
issue. Yes,
right.
On both, yeah.
So my question, and I don't know if you can answer this, maybe you can, with a federal state of emergency, with the issues like Commissioner Elliott's talking about, would we not have clawback procedures through the federal
I don't think
emergency?
so. And again, I don't pretend to have particular expertise in that area, but it's my understanding that the president's action basically was enabling him to reach a federal
Enact FEMA.
Emergency
Right.
Funds.
funds. Yes.
It pushes FEMA into play, who will have the funds, who then will develop the rules for distributing it out.
We can tap into it.
Right, because if Congress has already met to talk about the House at least, what their bill's gonna look like, obviously, the Senate's gonna have to get together and come up with something. It's already got things in there like 14 days of sick leave for government employees.
Mm.
How that's gonna come out into the world, I don't know.
Well, there's more bills on the floor right now too, but you had something else, Chuck?
I think that may actually be what the manager was talking about, maybe a second tier. I think there's some emergency funding which he could authorize last week, And as we see this getting ramped up, and I think that may have been part of the federal emergency acting prior to the time that he was able to receive congressional authorization on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. And so I think that was the president's effort to get ahead of that, not knowing how long it would take Congress to act. So, yeah, I would certainly agree with you. This is the first time we have seen a national emergency declared. The first time we've seen the governor have to enter the style of orders that he has. I know my daughter-in-law is an educator out of state, and last week in Virginia, Maryland, D.C., they were struggling with closing school and recognizing all of the ramifications that has. Once the governor took the action he did yesterday to close schools here, it creates a whole nother level of challenges that the county needs to address and that are really spoken to in this resolution. Our HR director anticipated these issues, and for the last several weeks, Kathy has had a committee meeting to say, what are we going to do when our employees have sick kids, have sick parents, have daycare issues? And so I think we are able to address that more intelligently this morning as a result of the work that the HR director, that the health director, that our
Actually,
emergency
that's the piece, if I can
done.
approach, Madam Chairman, because Part B, these are, both A and B are tied together, basically. I mean, I say tied together, obviously the board don't have to approve a state of emergency to enact B, but the A leaves it there for you to be able to amend as you move forward, given there's some things change. Part B has this piece here that I just want to share with you all. We've done this once since I've been here. Commissioner Yates will remember this one before you. When we had the issue with the animal shelter, we enacted a resolution allowing county manager authority to do what they needed to do to get the shelter back up and running. What you have there is part of Part B, granting the authorities,
That's the way I do it.
granting the authorities in the resolution speaks of an example, which is this advanced sick time policy. And you can read through that there, but basically what it does is it allows a lot of our employees that may not have sick time, again, based on what the governor did yesterday. Come tomorrow morning, we could have issues where, you know, someone needs to do something with their child but doesn't have any available time. If they've got available time, we'll allow them to work through it, obviously, but this expands the parameters of sick time, more or less, where it can be either or scenario, because you're going to have children that need daycare, have daycare needs, or parents that have daycare needs, and this allows them the ability, A, to use sick time to cover that, or if they have to actually have a sick child, or if they end up in an emergency situation where they need to get the advanced sick leave, they'll come to HR, and we can be able to work them through that, where they'll have an accrual process to pay that back, or an emergency situation where they can't do it through the accruals, they'll have to pay it back out of their check. So, but we feel like that's probably going to be needed maybe at some point in time. And that's part of Part B, again, advancing some powers temporarily, and that's the key word, for the next 30 days, where we can maneuver between the personnel resolution, any other emergency that comes down the pike. Let me back up just a little bit for Friday. So you spoke of March 13th. Friday, what we enacted was basically the skeleton parts of what the governor or DHHS sent out, you know, advising gatherings. So here in the county, we kind of tempered that with senior services, the libraries, and Parks and Rec. So anytime you don't have to gather, basically, we're going to not gather, essentially. Definitely not going to gather anybody any crowds over 100. Inside the county walls with employees, we did things with restricting travel in and out of the county for right now, and actually going through with applications to hire if it's not public safety related things. You know, if you have an application and you're in HR, for example, we can hold off on that. Trying not to have people come in the building as much as possible. We sent out on our Facebook page and on the homepage of the county site, you know, the issues of if you're sick, please stay home. If you can conduct business with the county electronically, which majority of our services you can, particularly like building permits and things like that, please do. If you can pay bills online, go for it. So we did all of that, what I call low-hanging fruit Friday. And then, as Chuck spoke of yesterday, the governor kind of put another piece to that, which is the schools closing. So we anticipate we're gonna have some questions, and we probably are gonna be fielding a lot of stuff come probably today, to get ready for tomorrow morning, so.
I guess I got a question for Lillian. You got a second, Lillian? I tried to do a cram course on this, coronavirus last night up until very late hours of the morning. How's this compared? I mean, first of all, I read there's not really enough statistics here to know what's actually happened, other than it's not as bad as what it was originally thought. Is that what you've been hearing? Is that what you read? Or I think I seen the latest results that just come in last night from like this WorldNet, corona update.
I don't know that I'm the right person to answer if it's as serious as the media has made it. What I can tell you, I'm hearing from my public health avenues, are that in the United States, we're fortunate that we're getting this a little bit later than other countries. And what the steps that we're taking in the United States and the governor are taking are reflective of what we've seen in places like Italy, where they kind of waited for it to get bad, and once it got bad, they were unable to respond appropriately because they just waited too long. So right now, those of us who are looking through measures, and those of us who are parents and have children that are not able to participate in sports and schools, right now it seems, well, I don't know anybody that's sick. There's no one in Davidson County that's sick. But the only way you can get in front of this is by putting these unique measures in place, things that we've never done before. And that is the reason for this.
Do you know the age group that this is really affecting?
My understanding is that everyone is on a level playing field for getting the virus. The severe illness occurs over the age of 65, particularly over the age of 80. There seems to be another break point at that level. However, for those of us under the age of 65 that have underlying health conditions, we are at more of a chance to get severe illness from this. So, level playing field for contracting it, but there are different levels of how that virus will act in your body based on your health and age.
So the death rate, if you would be the older generation or less healthy.
It's like triple over the age of 50.
The problem with the virus and the incubation period, the 2 to 14 days, the median's around about 5 days, I've heard. So when you think about the virus and the operational issues that we have, is necessarily the 2 to 14 days of the incubation period of time. You're fully contagious, but you're not showing any results. You don't have a fever, really no cough, anything like that, but yet you're contagious. That's one of the areas that remains a little bit different than everything else, because normally, it is conducive with the flu and the common cold, and it's viral, and good practices like washing our hands, that can mediate a lot. Yes. But with the individuals that have that and are around people with those underlying health conditions, or maybe working in an office environment, it could spread rapidly because they necessarily don't show the signs. So one thing that we were talking about, well, should we have the little markers, testing the people's, I guess, their temperatures and everything. There's a lot of them that come through that might be contagious and that might have the virus that would necessarily not show up. So that y'all have y'all's hands full.
Commissioner Elliott, you're speaking to exactly why, again, the state of North Carolina is asking people to stay at home, don't gather, essential functions only, because you're exactly right. What we call in public health is shedding. You're shedding the virus before you, it's very possible with this disease that you're shedding the virus before you're symptomatic. So if we're all together and we're within 6 feet of each other, we all know to avoid people who are sneezing and coughing, but it's possible one of us could be infected, and we are shedding, and no one knows to avoid us. So that's what, again, why we cannot say enough about washing hands and avoiding people if you don't have to be around them.
It's the same thing with flu, though, right?
Yes, sir. There are a lot of different things that are that way. The norovirus is the same way.
I'm looking here at the statistics. 0 to 9, there's been no fatalities. 10 to 18.
I'm sorry, 0 to 9?
0 to 9,
Okay,
0
thank you, I'm sorry.
fatalities, yeah. 10 to 19 years old, it's 0.02%, which everybody's saying the coronavirus is so bad because it's I've heard 7%, 0.7% actually up till a couple of days ago. But these are the latest statistics, and from what I read here, you know, they've been trying to gather all this information from China and Italy or whatever. It's taken a little bit of time to get the information up. But, you know, when you get to 70 to 79 years old, it's 8.0%, 8%. And then 14.8% after you get 80 plus. So all these are new numbers that they're actually gathering, as you might as well say, on the go, you know. So, and the reason I say this about the schools, why they let the schools out, I mean, basically 0.02% is the rate of catching the virus, period, you know.
Yeah, but I think if I understood Lillian correctly, yes, it is the younger crowd, they can still catch it and they can still spread it. So if a fifth grader gets off the bus with grandpa, and the fifth grader contracted it at school, now grandfather, because they have nobody else to watch him, grandfather's a risk. So the idea, I think, would be if we had a 2-week period where everybody kind of stayed home as much as possible, then we could try to prevent that virus from spreading. Is that?
I mean, that's
That's my
exactly what
understanding,
they're
yes,
saying. Yeah, I mean, I understand what they're saying.
And you know,
Same thing with the flu, too. They take the flu home to grandpa, probably going
And
may hurt
the-
him as well.
the sad elephant in the room is the fact that, you know, the testing hasn't been there. So no matter how much data that we get, it's skewed. It's not true. There could be so many more people that have this that could drive down even further the mortality rate that would help all the people that are panicking and everything like that. But it also could determine that there's been more deaths that might not have showed up because these people hadn't been tested. So, I mean, it's a ball in I don't feel like it's something that we should just be up in panic about. I think that with good procedures like the health department has said with y'all's flyer, washing hands and doing, mediation, techniques and teaching people the correct way to fist bump and not spread the disease is the way to go. But it's hard decisions, and I'm not sure we have all the right decisions, but if we can just try to do what we can and be proactive, I think we're heading in the right direction.
Yes, sir. I don't feel confident in any data, as you said. It's
I don't
just,
either.
it is really, it's so rapidly evolving. I've heard all kinds of things. We've all heard things. We're trying to grasp at straws to get those hard numbers because decisions are much easier to make when we have data to driving those decisions and that we can fall back on. I've heard things like they're going back and looking at people who have died in the last few months of pneumonia, then maybe it was COVID-19. So the data is really poor. But what is true is that the only way you can stop the spread of an infectious disease is to keep people away from each other. While we're talking about the magnitude of this disease may not be deadly, but a workforce that is infected with COVID-19 can't work. So people that have heart attacks, people that have strokes may have a lesser chance of receiving the medical care they need if our medical community cannot respond because they've been stricken with COVID-19 and they're not at work. So it's not just about us being prepared for COVID-19 in our healthcare system and our first responders. It's about all the other medical emergencies that occur. So again, people staying away from each other, not spreading this disease, meaning we have more healthy people that are able to respond to other things that occur in our community.
How far do you take this to where it shuts down the economy?
Right now, I don't think that we are there to make those decisions, but I do think that the governor's told us the 2-week limit
And just, I think, real quick, to not continue, I'm,
That's right, this is getting
this
out
is
of work.
emergency preparedness. This is two things basically this morning. Get your golden ticket into the federal funding game and give me the powers to deal with what's coming tomorrow morning. So I know we like to talk about the virus, but that's just ramping up part of the
That's right,
hysteria.
that's right.
So we're trying to temper the hysteria with actually good policy that's gonna deal with the issues that we have. It's like having a deck of cards, you've already been dealt your hand. So now how do you wanna play?
Well, like I told you, Karen can do the state of emergency.
She can.
I'm not prepared to vote on that because I don't think we're at a state of emergency yet. If we need to deal with some employee issues and,
I need a little latitude on the personnel resolution or any unforeseen thing that's coming my way. This sick time policy here that you have before you, I think is a great start and it'll get us prepared. But a little leeway on sick time in terms of either or, I can deal with my daycare issues. Like, I'm a great example. I have way more sick time than I do vacation time. Now, I've got a Nana that lives in Thomasville. Everybody don't have a Nana. But if I didn't, I could deal with it through my sick time. You know, even though my child technically ain't sick right now, so.
and just so you know, some of the issues that you're talking about that could arise, she's got the power to confirm the state of emergency at that point in time, you know?
The state of emergency was here before you this morning for you to, A, get your mind around it, and B, actually, to me, is more important than A right now. Because I'm gonna have that immediate pressure coming here in the next few hours. But while you're here, as you can see, that emergency, the now let it be resolved part of that state of emergency has got 4 points. And as Chuck said, they're not violating any of the emergency, preparedness parts of the ordinance right now. It would just be simply to get prepared for it in case we had to. We would have already called it at that point, and, if anything got called at the federal level, got pushed down, we'd already have the paperwork ready to go and be in place.
Yeah.
So.
Also,
I feel like some of that, and Commissioner Yates, I appreciate your point, and I do not wanna set it in a panic on this, cause I'm kinda with you, and I'm kinda with Lily, and I don't know what the data is, and I'm data driven too, but I do know this, I feel like at some point in time to get in the funding game, we're all gonna be declaring state of emergencies in North Carolina at some point in time.
If there's any funding needed, you know, I mean, if this blows over in 2 weeks, then really, you know, and there's nothing else that happens.
And I understand that,
Right.
but I mean, I think the main thing of why you wouldn't wanna do it at this point is the hysteria part, as you mentioned, the tempering of that. At some point in time, if we felt like if we had a crystal ball today and knew not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday, we'd be calling at a point in time, I mean, you know, is a week and a half gonna temper the hysteria? Probably not, it's gonna be worse. Cause at that point in time, we may have an actual case in Davidson County, I don't know.
And we have to keep in mind, there's some things that could cause us financial disturbances that are out of our control that have nothing to do, with an actual case of COVID-19, just like the shutdown of the schools.
Well, I think one of the
you
interesting
know.
ones you just brought up, and I'm not trying to create a hysteria. I've spoken with the sheriff about the exact question you just brought up, what about the jail?
what about the jail?
And so if you had to move inmates on a massive scale,
it
I don't
would
know.
be-
And
So
it-
where would you move them to?
I don't know.
Nobody will take them.
I don't have an answer to that this morning, but I do know this. I would need money from somebody to help it. I need
But
help.
I'm saying, that if you had a confirmed, coronavirus case in that jail, it's kinda like these cruise ships sitting off the coast, who's gonna take your other inmates?
If we didn't have
Yeah.
anywhere
Well,
to
no,
go,
if we
we'd
had
have to build
one,
a
we might could just
facility.
quarantine, you know, do something like that. I'm talking about if you, inside that confined space, you had an outbreak. At some point in time, I'm basically just setting up a real high-level scenario here. I'm going to need help.
Yeah.
This piece of paper gets me the ticket into the dance to get that help.
We've talked about this, and you would have to set up temporary tents, have negative pressure rooms to contain these individuals off-site, and all of that, if we could not move them somewhere, would be under our problem. We would have to
And
pay
it
for
may
that
not happen,
to set that
you know,
up.
and God forbid.
I'd say wait till it happens, okay?
And that's-
Because hell, we may all be on spaceships trying to find a place to live here in 6 months, so.
Again, let me reiterate that. I don't, you know, as you know, we can come to the chairman, Madam Chairman, to deal with that piece of it as it comes. Part B was almost essential. That's the reason why I need y'all this morning. Cause we're gonna have to craft something to get out employees here in just a few hours.
And I can understand the B part, because I understand there's a lot of parents right now that when the governor shut down schools, which I think adds to the hysteria. I mean, the stock market right now is just, to me, if we got a state of emergency, that's what they need to do. They need to shut the stock market down until things cool off, 'cause a bunch of us are losing money left and right.
I'm more worried about that, but, yeah, I can understand the B part, because you've got employees that, if they've got young children, and you're right, they may not have a Nana that can help them. And that's the sad part, but, Madam Chairwoman, it's whatever you wanna do on the A part. I'm good with B. Yeah, 'cause I understand we gotta take care of our employees. Our employees are the backbone of our government. And, that part I can understand, because shutting down the schools, it wasn't anything that they've done. So,
And I'm not trying to lay all the pressure on you, Madam Chair. If there becomes a time where we really think there's a state of emergency needed, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if you called another meeting and had, the rest of the board here too. I don't really like making some of these decisions with 3 board members missing. So,
And-
or if you wanna make it on yourself, I don't have a problem with that either. If you, I got, confidence in you. If you feel like there's a state of emergency needed, then you'll declare a state of emergency at that time. But at this point in time, I don't see one needed.
And my piece, and I'm gonna leave it there, I respect your opinion, Mr. Yates, I respect your opinion, Mr. Crotts. But I also respect the opinion of my president. And if the president, who has been against hysteria and against ramping up this, sees it fit to have a national, state of emergency, I just think that, he's our leader and our, I think it holds a precedent. So, I think being prepared necessarily is never a bad thing, but I relinquish, your opinion, Miss Chairwoman. I respect it and go along with it.
All right, this is the decision I'm gonna make at this particular time. We'll just move on to considering the, option number B and leave A at this point in time. I'll make the decision. I'll glean some additional information from absent members. It may be something that I decide to do tomorrow. It may be something I decide to do 2 weeks from now, but I'll take that responsibility.
yeah, and that's exactly, I agree with Commissioner Yates. I mean, it's whatever you wanna do, and if you, and it might be one of the things where you strike the pin and then have a meeting with everybody, or just call everybody individually. But that's your call, and you do whatever you feel like you need to do.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify with Mr. Fry. And number 4 says that it shall remain in effect until such time as the proclamation is amended or rescinded. And that must be with the full board. Is that correct?
Actually, it could be amended or rescinded by you
Okay.
or by the full
Or
board.
by the full board?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Just wanted to clarify that. All right, let's go on to number 2. Casey, do you need to say any additional?
No, ma'am.
Give us any
I
additional?
think everybody's-
Does anybody have any
I think everybody
questions?
understands
Any
that.
other questions about the second piece?
Mm-mm.
I think it was important to get this, out of the way before the workday started this coming week. I know that, department heads have been talking to one another about working from home, who can, who needs to be here, that sort of thing. So I fully trust, them and their decisions and their suggestions as well. So may I have a motion and a second to grant the manager broad authority during this state of, well, it's actually, we'll say the national and the state, of emergency. It's not local at this point.
I would make that motion, Madam Chairwoman.
Do I have a second?
I apologize.
Do we need to change that, or?
With your permission, I realized when this was being drafted, it anticipated that there would be a declaration of
Right.
state of emergency.
Right.
And so if I
Strike
might
that.
suggest that we would strike the paragraph that,
Mhm.
halfway down the page, whereas on March 15, 2020, Davidson County Board of Commissioners declared state of emergency exists. If we might just strike that one paragraph.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I figured that would kinda go along with the motion to make it work, but.
I apologize for the interruption.
Okay.
No,
No,
you're
that's
perfectly fine.
appropriate.
We may also need to amend the title of the resolution.
Yes,
Yes.
during the
yeah.
period of state of emergency at the top.
Yes. I'll make that, formally clean up the document following this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds great.
Okay,
If I needed to amend my motion or whatever, then what,
with
to
the
what, to
amendment,
what Chuck said,
And this is to adopt the resolution.
yes,
Adopt
This is
as
to-
amended.
yes.
yeah.
And this is good for how long?
30 days, I think, isn't it?
I think,
I think it's until we go back and change it.
This does not have a sunset
no, it
provision
does
in it.
not.
And that's, something Casey and I spoke about yesterday, and I think it was his expectation, and I didn't write it down, that we would put this for a period of 45 days.
Or 30 days, I mean, I,
30.
The-
I like
I'm
30.
good with 30
Do you wanna
days.
do it 30 days or until we go back and change it? And that way, it might be 2 weeks that we see this thing clear up and then we can go back and take that back
Put that in
out.
the motion and,
Yeah.
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 I'm good with the 30 days, 'cause trust me, I don't want no more powers than I don't need, so,
Okay.
yeah, this, 30 days is fine with me, and we'll see
I'd
where it
say
goes.
30 days, 'cause
That
we,
matches the
we got
state's.
time to revoke it with another board if we need
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
dispose of it. I just didn't see a date in here where it's sunset. It's,
If
Is it
someone
in
will
here
put that in
anywhere?
the motion, say that in the motion as well.
All right.
uh,
I'm gonna amend my motion again to add in, that this will, end April 15th on tax day. That this will end. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. All right, I have a motion and a do I have a second?
second.
Okay. Please cast your vote.
All of the votes are in, and that motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.